and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. And then Jesus told his disciples, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of the Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they will see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. Some time ago, I had an acquaintance, a young man, who was planning to go to college, and he found out that probably the best way that he could afford a college or go to college, because he was from a family that was not too affluent, was to join the military. And he found out that they had a very good program if he wanted to continue on and further his education. Then, after some time, he was called to active duty in a conflict. And he stopped to see me after he had gotten his notice that he was being transferred overseas to the combat zone. And he was trying to decide whether he should go or go AWOL. I suggested that he probably should honor his commitment that he made. And I said, well, you realized that when you signed up, didn't you, that it was a possibility? Well, the recruiter said it was unlikely that any conflict would come up where I was really involved in danger, and I probably wouldn't have to go. The odds were against it. But you did realize that you might be asked to go into combat. He said, well, come to think of it, I never really signed up for that. I never really signed up for that. That's basically the message that Peter had. Peter the Rock. And we celebrated Peter 2 weeks ago when he is called the Rock because he recognizes Jesus' Messiahship. And in our text today, Jesus begins to tell what this discipleship requires and is required of him as God's Son, as the Messiah. He said, look, disciples, here's what it's about. I'm going to have to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to be killed. And on the third day, I'm going to rise. And Peter takes him aside. And our gospel text said Peter rebukes him. He scolds him. No, you don't understand, Jesus. This is not how Messiahship works. Not in our country. And he probably went on to tell him that the Messiah takes care of things. He gets rid of the Romans. He restores us to our proper place as the chosen people. No, we're not going to let this happen to you. You're not going to be crucified. And Jesus said, You're in the way, Peter. And he probably said that similar things would have to happen to them. And I'm sure Peter was saying in some way, I didn't sign up for this. What I signed up for was the restoration of the ridding of the Romans and putting Israel in its proper place. That's what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for dying. And then Jesus tells them, here's what it takes to be an apostle. He says it in 3 different forms. You need to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. In each one of those cases, I'm sure the apostle said, oh, we never signed up for that. Okay, so let's take this. To deny yourself. Did you sign up for that? Did you get up this morning and pray that this morning or any time during the week that you would ask God to forget yourself today and only concentrate on other people? To make it a you day rather than an I day? I don't think many of you said that. And most of us, as we approach the day, are thinking about what will benefit us this day rather than what benefits anybody else or the group as a whole. I've told you many times one of the most impressive things that I was taught in my graduate school in psychology was the beginning class where the professor said, you can explain all behavior if you understand that every act of a person is an action to reduce threat to self. In other words, every act that you have is self-centered. And if you understand that, you can understand the erratic behavior of people that you meet. And more than that, you can understand your own behavior. Why you do some crazy things sometimes. Because somehow, socially or psychologically or theologically or physically, you are being challenged. And you want to reduce the threat to yourself. Everything about our society is centered on taking care of yourself. I haven't heard it in this election, but I'm sure it'll come out. Or maybe it won't. But you remember in the last 3 elections, or 4 elections, I guess, one of the questions you were supposed to ask yourself, am I better today than I was 4 years ago? And on that basis, you make your choice. Don't think about what benefits the country or the world, or talk about important issues like social injustice or global warming or anything like that. What will benefit me the most in the next 4 years? Which candidate? Now, I approach it from a different angle. Instead of thinking of which one to vote for will benefit you, you just kind of feel the pulse of the nation, and then you invest according to who you think is going to win. Totally self-centered. Totally self-centered. It's the principle on which all economic theories rest. How will it benefit me? All marketing and advertising is how will I be made better by this product or this service? How will I look better, feel better, be respected more, or be physically more comfortable? It's the basis of all advertising. And it is the reason we get in arguments, have hurt feelings, fight over a parking space, honk at the person who doesn't get away from the stop sign soon enough. It's all an inconvenience to me. I thought it was interesting. I heard somebody writing about this generation being the me generation, I wonder what generations he's lived through. Is there any generation that hasn't been a me society? Me money, me toys, me gadgets, me dreams, my plans. And the problem with that, it's never quite enough, no matter how well we are off. And Jesus turns us around and saying, look, part of the mission, my mission and my call to discipleship is framing how can I serve others, where others become primary. I make logs in my book and make sure I have a certain amount of people that I've dealt with in some way. And I look at the time spent on time that's just reflected on me. Even if I give 4 hours in a day to actual communication by phone or in person or in trying to help somebody or a hospital call, it still winds up 1 to 6 in favor of looking at myself. Jesus said, you deny yourself. And the second thing he said is, take up your cross. Now this is confusing sometimes because sometimes we misinterpret what it is to take up your cross, to bear the cross. To bear the cross is not to deal with some unexpected illness, some tragedy in the family, something that has happened that you can't control. That's not the cross. Cross is a voluntary act of discipleship, of taking up unpleasant tasks, things that will inconvenience you, some things that you really don't want to do, some things that make life sort of unpleasant for you. And you know what it is. You go into situations where you know that it's not going to be fun, but you have to go there. Get into situations where there is conflict and try to resolve it. When you want to run away, or you want to stay out, or I don't want to get involved. But that's not discipleship, Jesus said. You pick up your cross. If you have a hard time befriending somebody who is giving you trouble, go and try again. If you have trouble giving your time and finances to those in need, re-examine it. Maybe you ought to be a little more generous. If you have trouble finding the ability to forgive those who persecute you, who say all manner of bad things about you, tolerate it anyway and pray for them and try to help them. Maybe the light of Jesus will shine through. You have trouble with forgiveness? Then resolve that today you're going to forgive somebody who has ill-treated you. Take up your cross. And then Jesus says, and then you follow me. How many of you got up and say, I really want to follow Jesus? Well, in this case, you might have done that. But usually we do it before we really understand this thing about denying ourselves and bearing a cross. We'd like to circumvent that and follow Jesus on some other kind of journey. We want to follow Jesus without self-denial, without bearing a cross. And so most people who begin as followers adopt a theology or a lifestyle so far from what Jesus intended that it's hard to recognize it. We want leadership. We don't want to follow. And that's all right. In a lot of things, you have to be a leader. And we need leaders in the church. But when that leadership becomes a leadership that takes the primary focus away from Jesus, then that's not the right kind of leadership. When we wander away from Jesus and go on our own, we have dropped the cross. And rather than denying ourselves, we deny Jesus. I want to tell you a story. It's a man by the name of Mike Cohen that at the age of 18 developed leukemia. It was an extreme case, and the cure was very, very severe. A lot of very strong chemo. But the doctors rescued him, this 18-year-old, and got him back on his feet, and he developed an outdoors life. A lot of walking, a lot of physical exercise, a lot of biking. He grew strong. And he did a lot of fundamentally good things in terms of his riding, because he had sponsored rides that benefited a lot of people in need. One of the things that he hadn't realized is that the extreme chemo had damaged his heart. And at the age of 33, he developed a clot and was in a hospital in San Diego fighting for his life. That was in February of 2018 at the age of 33. And he was in the hospital. There was another man by the name of James Mazzucchelli, a Navy surgeon, flight surgeon, who that day was flying a mission, a trial mission, and was killed in a helicopter accident. He was taken to that hospital in San Diego, and 4 of his organs were given to 4 different people in that hospital looking for a transplant. His heart went to Mike. Mike was very grateful for what he had received. But James's mother was devastated, as any mother would be, at the death of her child. She sent letters to the 4 people that had received the parts of her son's body. 2 of them responded, but one, James, kept up his communication on a regular basis, both on social media and by letters and by phone calls. And 1 year later, Mike informed James's mother, Christine, that he wanted to take a bike ride 426 miles from San Diego to Jacksonville, Florida, where her son's body was buried, to pay an honor to the heart that he had received, and to raise money for some charity in the meantime. Christine and her husband followed on social media the progress, 1,426 miles. And on November of 20th, 2019, they drove into the cemetery to meet with James's parents. And his parents watched Mike as he kneeled down at the gravestone, said a prayer, and thanked James for his heart. And then he did something that I thought was really neat. One of the people that rode with him had a stethoscope, and he said to Christine, I want you to listen to your son's heart. I want you to know it's in a safe place. I want you to know that it's going to somebody that will carry on the legacy of your son, and that your son lives on. I don't know of any illustration that I can use that better illustrates this taking on the heart of Jesus. Jesus died and he gave you his heart for you to live again, but for you to pour it out to somebody else. And if you accept his heart, you signed up for something. You signed up for accepting his values, his priorities, and his love. And the challenge is simple. Whatever you have to sacrifice, whatever you have to lay down, and whatever cross you have to bear, that's what you signed up for. And so, the question to you is the same as it was to Peter. Did you sign up for this? Self-denial, taking a cross, following Jesus, taking his heart and making it live in you so it cares for others. That's what you sign up for. Amen. The sermon hymn, You've Come Down to the Seashore, 817. Please stand if you are able.